to the Fiasco Sports NBA season previews. I'm Matt Sampson. Joining me again is Mark Halliday. Thanks for coming in, man. Quick shout out before we get started to Sporties of the Arkabar. They've been nice enough to let us in nice and early just before NFL season kicks off. So they got a busy morning ahead, but they've still let us in to shoot. So check out the link to their Facebook in the description below. It's really worth coming down if you're in Adelaide and want to grab a meal and watch some sport at the same time. But the Clippers, Mark, one of the more polarising teams for mine in the league. Some people think it's all win-win-win championships, but others like me only have them ranked third in the West.
Well, they're only third because you've got the Spurs and the Thunder ahead of them.
Exactly.
They finished third in the West last season. They're probably going to do that again this year, but they have upgraded their roster. They have upgraded their bench rather this season.
Yeah, well, looking at what they did last season, they did go 57-25, which is definitely nothing to sneeze at, especially for a Western Conference team. And not only third in the West, but that also puts you third overall in the entire league. So top 1% of teams, top 10% I should say, to get my maths right. And they're also first in offense. So that Doc Rivers, Chris Paul driven offense was really working wonders last season, wasn't it?
You look at that team and Chris Paul orchestrating that offense, and you've got Blake Griffin scoring 24 points a game. No wonder they're the best team.
Yeah, and having Doc Rivers on the sideline, that was a massive move for them last year. It's definitely an upgrade from Vinny Del Negro, Vinny don't coach, to Doc Rivers. You know, those after timeout plays in particular, they always get a score after a timeout. You know, like you said, Chris Paul is just the best in the game at running an NBA offense. And they had plenty of shooters too, which always helps. Yeah,
they've got a lot of shooters. They've got JJ Redick, Matt Barnes, Jamal Crawford, who's just ridiculous at times.
Don't forget Byron Mullins.
Byron Mullins.
He's playing in China now, but we'll remember in memoriam Byron Mullins.
Those awkward sort of elbow jump shots that don't go in.
Yeah, but we've got that. It's like we've got down as their strength last season was their offensive weapons. They had just such a variety of ways in which they could kill you. I mean, Blake is that explosive athlete that we've always known he's been, but he also started stepping out and hitting jump shots as well, didn't he? Yeah,
he's been increasing his percentages from 10 to 16 feet and from 16 to the three-point line. So he's becoming more than a one-dimensional player, than that athletic big man
Yeah, well, he's a guy that we saw step out and take some threes last season, and you didn't actually cringe when he did so.
Yeah. So,
you know, and also being put on the line as often as he was and struggling so much early in his career, he also hit it from the stripe at about 70% last year.
Yeah.
So all those weapons they have that are improving as well, which is a scary thought. Even DeAndre Jordan, who he only scores on dump-offs and alley-oops and dunks and that, but, you know, he's still a presence around the rim, especially on the defensive end as well.
Yeah, his defense is the backbone of that team, and it's good to see him in some late game situations last year.
Yeah, I think he didn't play in fourth quarters a lot with Vinny Del Negro because they couldn't just trust him on the court to, one, hit his free throws, but also play defense. You know, he was lauded as a defensive player, but he still, in one-on-one situations, would get antsy in those last quarters. But that front court we're touching on was also their weakness last year, wasn't it? Because they didn't have a lot of backups, did they?
No, there wasn't a lot of backup last season, but they've definitely gone out and got someone really good to back up.
Yeah, well, they went in and brought Spencer Hawes in the off-season, which for mine is one of those boom or bust picks, certainly, isn't it? Because he came out last season with Philadelphia, and obviously there was a lack of talent on that roster, so he got a lot of touches and got to really show what he could do, but he's going to have to take a smaller role with the Clippers, isn't he?
Yeah, he's going to be coming off the bench for either Blake or DeAndre Jordan, and he'll play an important role because he can stretch the defense with his three-point shooting.
Yeah, well, I think for mine, I actually think he's going to have a relatively good year because the minutes that they were giving to Glenn Davis, which I don't know why they have on the roster other than the fact he is a Doc Rivers guy, which, you know, if he fits into the system, I take that back. He does fit, but those minutes will go to Spencer Hawes now. And to see him out there stretching the floor and adding just another variety of ways in which they can kill you with their offense will be really interesting. But they also picked up another Los Angeles player, a native of LA, is Jordan Farmer, who is sort of a like for Darren Collinson, isn't he?
Yeah, it's basically a straight swap. They're taking Darren Collinson out, Jordan Farmer in. He's not really better defensively or offensively, so much of the same.
Yeah, well, we've seen that Darren Collison is apparently the future of the point guard situation in Sacramento. So does this automatically mean a like-for-like situation that Jordan Farmer is a franchise point guard?
No.
No.
I'm sorry, Jordan Farmer, you're not.
But they also did lose a couple guys, didn't they? They lost Danny Granger, they lost Willie Green, the scoring machine, and Jared Dudley, the man with the quickest hands in the league, according to my Phoenix Suns Homer commentators. But, you know, do you think that really makes much of a difference to the roster?
Not really. They're still a great three-point shooting team. They lost some three-point shooting, but you still got JJ Redick, you still got Matt Barnes, you still got Chris Paul who can shoot threes. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, and we'll move ahead and look at the crunch time five that I've put down here that'll be playing the bulk of the minutes. When you've got these guys ahead of you in the rotation, it probably doesn't matter if you've lost Danny Granger, Jared Dudley. I mean, Chris Paul, obviously one of, if not the best offensive coordinator in the league. He's deadly in late game situations, and he's got that bit of mongrel about him as well, which is something you really want.
Just his determination to win always puts him ahead of other people.
Yeah, and he's also one of those point guards that has a relatively strong body to him as well. So despite his small size, I think he's only about 6 foot tall, he can get to the line and get inside and create havoc in those pick and roll situations. Jamal Crawford, though, I want to briefly touch on him. He's one of my favourite players in the league, because if you've been watching these videos, you would know that I do have an affinity for gunners. And watching Jamal Crawford just cross it over 3 or 4 times and then shoot a 30-footer is one of the most beautiful things in the league, isn't it?
I can't, the amount of times he crosses behind his back at the three-point line and then jacks up a shot right in someone's face and it rainbows in is unbelievable. I don't know anyone else like it.
I think he's nearly close to the all-time leader in 4-point plays made as well, which is pretty much entirely because he kicks his legs out as far as he can and draws as many fouls as possible. But like you said, yeah, even just purely for the entertainment factor, Jamal Crawford is definitely one of my favourite players in the league, and 6th man of the year, so he's no slouch either. We shouldn't hate on him for the spectacular. He's also quite a talented player. But the guy that I think who will determine how far the Clippers can go isn't Chris Paul. It's not Jamal Crawford. Sadly. Although I'd love to see Jamal Crawford carry a team to a championship one day. It's Blake Griffin, you know, a former #1 pick, a guy who came into the league with so much potential and the ability to explode in the league. And he's done that, especially last season. He really evolved, didn't he?
Yeah, as I said before, he expanded his mid-range game to become a two-way player. He's no longer just a highlight machine.
Yeah, exactly.
He's actually a productive player who makes defenses think twice about whether to guard him up close or to take a step back and prevent the drive.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys that I really feel generally sorry for Blake sometimes, because people just hate on him for being just a dunker, which is the most ridiculous criticism I've ever heard of anyone, because he came into the league and was a 2010 guy from day one. And last season it showed that he really is a more all-round player, because like you said, he's stepping out and he's becoming a more versatile scorer. And, you know, 24 points, 9.5 boards, he was 3rd in MVP voting, which, you know, if the media can recognise that so broadly, it's quite clear that he is definitely more than just an aerial threat.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with being a highlight machine, but...
Yeah, well, definitely. That's the best part of the game, as we've just touched on with Jamal Crawford. You know, highlights make you the best player on the court.
That's why it's called Lob City.
Yeah, well, he did make Lob City pretty much. As soon as Chris Paul came over, the Lob City era started, and, you know, All-NBA second team, 3rd in MVP voting, like I said. Blake is a guy who has the ability to become the best player on this team if he isn't already. You know, Chris Paul was that massive signing that gave them a bit of respectability, but I think the development of Blake is where we're going to see how far they can go.
The Clippers have sort of become that team where no one used to want to play for them in the past, and now they're 3rd in the West, 3rd in the league, and now people want to play for them because they're a legitimate championship contender. Yeah,
exactly, and I think we saw when Blake first came into the league and Baron Davis was the point guard, which again, another gunner and another all-time great in my eyes.
I agree.
They were just entertaining, and, you know, people didn't want to flock to them like they would a championship contender, like you said, but now they have become a serious threat. And I said earlier that they are polarising. A lot of people think they can win, a lot of people think they have no chance in hell, but they might not win a championship, but they'll definitely be a playoff team and a top 4 team in the West at that. So, you know, like you said, Blake has really helped transform them into a serious contender, and I think if he can take his game to a next level, those polarising opinions will start to change a little bit. But once again, we've started to get a bit serious, haven't we, and started to go into the deep in-depth thing. So we're going to switch it up with, this is probably my favourite, believe the hypothetical question that we've been sent in so far, because it's sort of, when I first read it, I was a bit confused, and I was like, maybe, yeah, I can see that. And then I did a bit of research. I went back to my childhood, and I thought this has actually nailed it, bang on the head.
This is 100%.
Quickly before we get into it, shout out to the Believe the Hype boys for sending this one in. This is my favourite one. Check out their podcast, follow them on Twitter, Facebook, everything's going to be on the screen. I've got to get into this one real quick though. The Clippers have the most complete Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles rotation in the NBA, with Chris Paul being Leonardo, Blake Griffin, Michelangelo, JJ Redick, Donatello, and Matt Barnes, Raphael. Matt Barnes, Raphael is probably the one that stands out the most, isn't it?
Yeah, because Raphael's that guy who always wants to throw the first punch, and Matt Barnes is exactly that guy. He'll hit a 3 in your face and then want to start a fight down the defensive end.
Well, he doesn't even need to hit the 3 to start a fight. You know, he might punch you while he's shooting the 3 somehow. So that one's bang right nail on the head there. I think Matt Barnes is definitely Raphael, but I like Leonardo's a good pick because he's the leader of the bunch. Chris Paul is the leader of this team. He's also courageous, pretty feisty as well. Michelangelo, a love of pizza. I can really see Blake with a love of pizza. He seems like that guy, doesn't he?
Yeah, just after a game, tucking into a nice big pizza. Why not?
Sitting in his Kia, eating a slice of pizza. And Donatello, the nerdy one of the bunch. If you had to pick a nerdy guy on the team, now that Byron Mullins is gone, it has to be the second token white guy. Now they've got Spencer Hawes as well.
Yep.
Maybe they can switch between that. We can have a double Donatello.
Yeah, but as you were saying before we started filming, JJ Redick looks like a bit of a nerd, so why not? He sort of fits that role.
Yeah, and he went to Duke as well, so he fits that. But yeah, no, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Clippers definitely has a nice ring to it. I mean, they wanted to relocate the Clippers for a while after the whole Donald Sterling thing, so why don't we bring in the Seattle Turtles? Or something about Tennessee Turtles.
That has a nice ring to it.
Yeah, maybe. Tampa Bay Turtles.
I'm sold.
I'm sold? All right, Tampa Bay Turtles. Quickly, we've got to wrap it up. The 30-second prediction on the clock. What do you think is going to happen in Los Angeles this year?
I think much of the same is going to happen in Los Angeles. Third, they'll probably finish third again. I don't think that they're quite good enough to beat the Spurs or the Thunder to that 1 or 2. They'll have home court. They'll probably get to the second round again and then run into either the Spurs or the Thunder and probably get knocked out there. Unfortunately for the Clippers, they'll have another second round exit, which is annoying because they seem like they should go further, but they just can't. They can't get that extra hump.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that stands out. That's why a lot of people jump on them as being NBA champions, because they clearly do have the potential to be a championship winning team. But I'm with you. I think the Clippers, at best, Western Conference finalists. If someone gets injured, or if the Spurs, you know, knock on wood, they aren't as ageless as they have been, they can probably make that. But, you know, that's as far as I can see them going. Western Conference finals, third in the West. You know, much of the same as they did last year.
Yep.
But we got to wrap it up there. Quickly before we go, once again, shout out to Sporties at the Arca Bar and Believe the Hype Boys. Check out the links in the description below. It's really worth your time to get around it. Thanks, Mark, for coming in, talking to the Clippers with me. We'll see you next time.